I've seen the torch of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all. So
with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom in our great country, this is Dr. George Simon. Welcome to another edition of Character Matters. I'll be with you for the next hour or so, and I invite you to join in on the conversation about what I consider to be the most pressing issue of our time, the most pressing threat to our freedoms that we enjoy here in America and everywhere in the free world, and that is the character crisis that we face. That is the subject of this program, and that's also the subject of my work for the last 25 years in my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Character Disturbance, and the Judas Syndrome, and my numerous blog articles, some of which have appeared in the Huffington Post, but regular articles appearing on the Counseling Resource website at the blog Psychology, Philosophy, and Real Life at www.counseling.resource.com, and on my own blog, dealing with manipulative people and other disturbed characters. And that website is www.manipulative-people.com. That's www.manipulative-people.com. And also you can find information on my website, www.drgeorgesimon.com. That's drgeorgesimon.com. But I invite you to join the conversation tonight at area code 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296 if you want to join the conversation. Last week, we were just getting into a discussion about something that affects all character development, and that is how we rear our children. And I was beginning to talk about the new discipline and some of its shortcomings, and I was also talking about punishment and some of the things that we have learned and probably not learned too well in the last 20 years or so, last 20 or 30 years of research regarding punishment and discipline in general. And we kind of ran out of time, so I'll be revisiting that today. But there have been other things in the news, some other events that have really underscored some important principles that I have always written about and done research about. So I'll be tending to those matters today. But if you want to join the conversation, we'd love to have you. Many of you have had experience dealing with someone of impaired character. Perhaps you even worked with or lived with someone with a personality or a character disorder. Perhaps you know what it's like to have to deal with these kinds of issues. Perhaps you have not only some stories to tell or maybe some questions to ask, but some helpful information to share that might benefit others listening tonight who have had similar experiences. So if you want to join the conversation, please call us at 718-717-8296, and I'll be happy to patch you in. There's something that happened this past week or so that really got my attention. There's not too much that we know about it, but it sparked outrage all over the world, and it raised a number of issues for me, many of which I wanted to talk about, but probably only have time for a few of those things today. But they all fit together they fit together nicely with what has been perhaps my life's work as a psychologist. You know, I was trained as most psychologists were trained in all the major schools of thought. And the classical schools of thought, by and large, are what I would call a fear-based psychology. That is, the psychology of the classical theorists like Freud and Jung and Adler and several of those folks, the psychology primarily concerned itself with people's fears and anxieties and the kinds of things that can happen to folks that are unhealthy when, out of fear and out of anxiety, we repress our feelings or we build defenses. And that's why I call this classical or traditional psychology a fear-based psychology. And when you're studying the human condition and you're wanting to know what makes people tick, and you're wanting to try and figure out, why people do all the things they do, and then you're given this psychology that basically says we are all basically okay folks except for the things that scar us and cause us to be fearful. That's basically the working tenet of much of the classical psychology, that we are inherently good folks, that we suffer trauma, and we, in that suffering of trauma, build defenses because we become afraid. Things scare us. We become afraid. Perhaps our childhood was abusive. Perhaps it was neglectful. Perhaps we didn't get the nurturing we wanted, or that we needed. And so we become fretful of life. We build a wall of defenses around our fears, and that defines us. The way we try to overcome our emotional scars or wounds. And, the classical psychology concerned itself with that to such a degree that it made you believe that there really was nothing more to people than the things that scare them and the defenses they build. Well, I always found that psychology rather limited in view. And I wrote an article for the Counseling Resource website. Let's see when this was. I think it was in 2009. Yes, it was in October of 2009. And it was part of a two-part series called Socialization is a Process. And basically in that a series of articles, I made the case for the fact that we are not civilized by nature. We are not naturally, we're not born civilized. We are by nature animals. We are creatures kind of programmed to do some pretty primal things, but we can, through good nurturing, through good upbringing, through the process of civilization, we can rise above our baser instincts. And for people of faith, this is primarily what our faith is all about. We have these wonderful systems of belief. Many of them are wonderful. I'm not so sure about some of them. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But we have these wonderful systems of belief that have endured over time and that people have modified over time based on our innate needs. And these belief systems, their function is to help us rise above our baser selves and to be more than we can otherwise be. And this whole process of civilization in the vast scheme of things, when you look at human development and how long it's taken for us to get here, this process of civilization is really a blip in history. It's a very small, recent period of time in the historical calendar. We spent many, many more thousands of years grunting and groaning and hunting and gathering and warring, especially warring, and carving out territory. As the animalistic creatures we are inherently, we spent many, many more years doing this than we did building civilizations and realizing that through cooperation and through channeling of our baser instincts, we could serve one another and help support one another, and in the process grow and develop this thing called character, and in the process really advance the cause of life. Do wonderful things like we eventually did, discover wonderful discoveries, develop the craft of medicine to the point that we can cure all kinds of illnesses. All of these advances in our civilization are very, very recent in the historical calendar. We are, however, in our deepest legacy, brutes by nature. And this really came home to me when I was reading about and listening on TV news about this horrendous event in Africa, in Nigeria, with this Boko Haram group, just one of many militant groups, extremist ideology type groups operating in Africa, trying to stamp out all vestiges of Western culture and Western attitudes, because many of these adherents believe those values are the embodiment of pure evil. Now, I want to say something about these movements and the characters, and I'm using that word very carefully, the characters that are behind these movements. These archetypal warrior figures, I'm not convinced myself that many of these leaders of these movements are anything but sociopaths or psychopaths, and they are not, in my opinion, driven by the ideology they espouse. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is that, there was an announcement by this Boko Haram group that they abducted these girls from this school because they felt they had a right to, because the girls, after all, were already selling themselves basically to the devil by attending a school that preached Western values and exposed them to Western ideals. Well, the very fact they were even going to school, in some folks' view, was an evil in itself. So, therefore, they had a right, they made the case, to go even further than that. If the parents of these children, and if these children had allowed themselves to be already so corrupted, then there would be nothing wrong with these folks abducting these girls and selling them as slaves on the open market. So that's what they set out to do, and this has been their threat. And of course, those folks who have been the victim of this horrendous and outrageous act are mortified to think about what could be happening to their children. But the way I see it, the leaders of these movements do not necessarily have to really believe these things. Now, they are particularly dangerous if they do believe it. Because, as we know, one of the great advances in psychology in the last 25 or 30 years or so has been this cognitive behavioral revolution. And by that I mean what we have come to appreciate is that how we see things, how we look at the world, how we perceive our role in it, how we perceive the world's nature, the attitudes we have toward other people and toward life in general, that view, that perspective that we adopt pretty well predisposes our behavior. In other words, tell me what you really think about things, and I can pretty well predict how you're going to act. For example, if you really believe that a woman is necessarily meant by nature to be subordinate to a man, and if you believe inherently and without question that a woman's place is to be more submissive to her husband or to her partner, then I can pretty well predict how you're going to conduct your affairs as a marital partner or as a partner in a relationship. I can pretty well predict that at times, maybe many times, that your behavior is going to be, if not outright oppressive, then possibly even abusive. You can predict that from the belief you hold. So it is possible for some of these militants to actually hold these ideologies that would predispose these heinous acts, and that truly makes them dangerous. But I am not convinced that the militant leaders of these movements are anything but archetypal, dominance-seeking human predators, the predators that we have always called psychopaths or sociopaths. These are the folks who have such a desire to dominate. It's just part of their character. It's an innate predisposition that they have, and they believe it is their entitlement, it is their right, because they see themselves as superior creatures to other human beings. I explain all this in my book, Character Disturbance. I explain how the psychopathic mind works. And I also have written several articles on both the www.counselingresource.com blog and the www.manipulative-people.com blog about sociopaths and psychopaths and their mindset. Now, these folks who are out to dominate and who believe that they are entitled to prey on those that they see as inferior to them, I think that they successfully recruit their armies by appealing to folks who buy into these extreme ideologies. So I do think that there are folks in these movements, and this makes them dangerous, by the way, who really do believe these horrible ideologies. And for all of you out there who believe, I know it's nice to say there are many with you with kind of a progressive mindset that want to believe that all belief systems are equal and that every path represents a possible pathway to an intimate connection with the transcendent. If you want to believe that, I guess you can. You're entitled to your opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts, however. All you have to do is look closely, examine closely some of the ideologies that we have out there. If you only stop and think for a moment, and you look for carefully at some of these ideologies and their basic tenets and what they suggest about the human condition and what they suggest about people's roles in society, you will see that an ideology like this, that says basically that an education, exposure to a wide variety of ideas, is such an evil thing that you have already sacrificed your right, basically, to a decent life. And now someone who sets themselves up as a judge is entitled to do as they please with you because you are no longer a person of worth anyway, because you dared to expose yourself to a wide variety of free thought. And you dared to educate yourself in ways other than as prescribed by those who would dictate how you should learn and what you should learn, and even if you should learn. So these folks are, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, these leaders are the archetypal dictators. They get adherence with their ideology. Hitler was the same way. Hitler just wanted to be king, and he almost succeeded. And he preyed upon the wounded souls of the German people, who are a prideful people and who were decimated in the First World War and had just about all their pride stripped. So he comes along with a powerful message to them. He comes along with a powerful message that they can soothe their wounds with, they can lick their wounds. His message was, you know what? We are still the greatest. Our race is the superior race. What's really wrong is that all these inferior races have infested our culture and have brought us down and brought us to the brink of ruin. And if we just rid ourselves of this infestation of lesser people and restore the dignity of our superiority, then not only can we rebuild our own great society and take our rightful place, but we will basically rule the world. And you know, it was a really attractive message to a lot of folks. And as the military machine geared up, and as victory came, because other folks were slow to recognize the dangers of these ideologies. Others were very slow to recognize this. Because of this, the military machine was able to make some very quick inroads and secure some very quick victories. This really emboldened people. They began to believe again, yes, we are the superior race, and yes, we will conquer. And not only will we restore our own dignity, and not only will we rid ourselves of all of the lessers among us, but we will purify the rest of the world as well, and we will emerge victorious. This instinct is in us all. And I would say it is especially along genetic lines, it is especially in men. There's a Tears for Fears song that encapsulates one of Carl Jung's archetypes. Many of you perhaps have heard it. Everybody Wants to Rule the World is the title of the song. Won't hum a few bars for you, but this is basically it. And you know, when children play as very young children, and they see movies and cartoons, they have fantasies. The boys have fantasies of being the hero who slays all the dragons and becomes king, and the girls they want to be their princesses, and some want to be the queen. This is built into us. It's part of our heritage as creatures, and the task of character development and the task of civilization is the process by which we evolve to a higher level than that. That's the process by which we do that. Socialization is a process. There are some folks, however, who are determined to be brutes. They want nothing of the civilization process. Many times it arises the same way that I think it did in pre-Nazi Germany, whereby people feel defeated, they have their pride stripped, they feel they don't have a voice, and they find cause to point the finger at what they view as those lesser influences in their midst that are the source of all the problems. And they begin to spew this hate that all we have to do is rid ourselves of this influence and we will restore our greatness. Make no mistake, folks. Make no mistake about this. There is a movement afoot, a worldwide movement. We did not start it. We did not declare war on it. But this movement has already declared war on the free world. And today the free world has two bitter enemies. It has the enemy from within, in our own failings of character, in our own failings to be the kind of people that we can be, where we support one another, we don't lie to one another, we don't cheat one another, and we don't exploit one another, but rather ensure our own prosperity. The enemy that we have within is a big threat. That's the character threat. And then we have this enemy from without that hates every single thing we stand for as a free society and is determined to destroy it. Not just that. It would be a hollow victory just to destroy. Because the archetype is to dominate. That is the drive. I talk about this drive and the need to subjugate it in all three of my books. I talk about it at length, and I have several blog articles on both blogs about this. It's not just that they want to destroy us. The big desire is to rule. That's the objective. The objective is to dominate. These folks, with preaching this radical ideology, whether they actually believe in the ideology or not, I think many of the foot soldiers do. I'm not convinced that the leaders, the power brokers do. They're just out for the power and the dominance. But the objective is to rule the world, to impose their will on everyone else so that everyone lives under the rules they want to set. And this is an age-old story. This has been with us, this urge in man, this will to dominate, this has been with us since the very beginning. And our only prayer, this is why I have dedicated my whole professional life to character development. And it's also why, especially in my book, The Judas Syndrome, it's also why I have renewed my efforts to blossom and develop and to make fruitful the core of my faith. And that is, we have to own who we are before we can rise above it. In other words, we have to know who we are without pretense and without kidding ourselves. We have to recognize what's really in us. We have to be brutally honest with ourselves. I say in Character Disturbance and also in the Judas Syndrome, that if we don't get honest, brutally honest with ourselves, about ourselves, and with each other, about each other, we're pretty much done. This human race is pretty much over. This thing called civilization, it's a blip in history anyway. And you know what? In the evolutionary history of creatures on this planet, human history is a blip. It's a very small blip, human history. There are lots of creatures roaming this world long, long, long before us, many of whom aren't with us anymore. And we might not be with us anymore if we keep going the way we're going. What we need is an entirely new psychology. A psychology that completely replaces what I'd call the classical psychology of fear. Human beings are much more than their fears and insecurities, and their behavior is motivated by much more than their fears and insecurities. It's not just all about the traumatic things that happen to us. These folks over in Nigeria, this Boko Haram gang, I'll call them. This outfit did not go out and do the horrible thing that they did because they were scarred as children, or neglected, or didn't get enough nurturing, or suffered emotional wounds at the hands of the evil Western Empire, and therefore they built these walls of defenses, and their best defense is a strong offense, and they're only trying to protect themselves and to ease their pain by doing these horrendous acts. No, this is a ridiculously inadequate and largely incorrect psychology. It's time to bury this psychology. It really is. What we need is a psychology that really takes a serious look at the human condition and explains who and what we are as creatures and what really drives us to do these things. And one of the things that I believe really drives these radical movements is this age-old, built into us, especially built into men. You rarely hear of women heading up any of these kinds of groups. The warrior archetype, the psychopath, the sociopath, predator archetype does not seem to be carried along the X chromosome. It seems to be a Y chromosome deal. And I know I'm probably making an oversimplification there. I'm saying that just as a matter of speak. I have no evidence, nor would I begin to suggest that we're talking about a strictly genetic thing, and that's where the gene comes from. However, I am saying that it is an innate trait for us as human creatures, especially men, this will to dominate, and where the evil in the world comes from. This is the definition of evil in my book. This is the best definition of real evil. And Jung called this the shadow. When we don't own what we're all about, and then make it our free choice to manage or to temper our baser instincts for our good and for the good of all, when we don't own who we are and then make the effort to be more than the animals we basically are, that's evil. That is the very definition of evil. And that is why I believe that these movements are evil. And that is also why I believe that we, as a free people, have written our own epitaph, because we have not responded to this war like any of us need to. Folks, our freedoms are on the line. We take them for granted. You know, each time I begin this show with the song that you hear and end it with this song, I have a little bit of nervousness about folks out there making the connection between this song and my topic matter. But I'm hoping that you can see it. I'm hoping that you can now see this. our freedoms depend upon us being the kind of people that we can be. And within this free society, that means that all of us who make up this wonderful land, all of us that make up this wonderful America, where we enjoy the blessings of so much liberty, all of us must do our part to stop taking from one another, to stop exploiting one another, to stop cheating one another, to contribute more, to hold each other accountable, especially to hold each other accountable, especially those who would shirk all their responsibilities to take up the torch of freedom and make sure it gets preserved. We are not facing the enemies that we have, the enemies within who have not taken up this cause, and the enemies without, the enemies that would dominate us, the enemies that have set out to dominate us, who have set out to destroy this way of life. Now, there are many things about our culture that are legitimate targets. It is very unfortunate. It is very unfortunate. This is so true in history. You can see this all the time in all these movements that have sprung up in history. It is very unfortunate that sometimes these movements are given the very fodder that they need to be confirmed in their radical ideology. There is so much that we have let get so out of hand in our culture with our freedoms. So much superfluous violence, so much banality, so much, for lack of any other word, lack of character, plastered everywhere, promoted, even idolized. And this really gets the ire of some. This really irks some. Of course, it's absolutely no excuse for the dastardly deeds that they do, but it gives them fodder, it gives them ammunition, it gives them something to point to justify the damage that they want to do. So it is incumbent upon us to recognize both the enemy from without and the enemy from within, and to recognize that we are in a war. Whether we like it or not, this war has already been declared. It has already been declared. And we will either lose our freedom like sheep going to the slaughter because we do nothing, or we will come to our senses and we will stand up. And I sure hope we do. I don't know that we will. I don't have that confidence. I want to be optimistic. That's why I come on every single Sunday night and I give my message. That's why I think I was inspired to write that song to touch people's hearts. And we're coming across that time of the year when, God willing, the message will be carried to a lot of different venues, performance venues all across the country, and maybe the message will spread a little bit more. I hope that's the case. And I haven't given the number in a while, just in case any of you are listening out there and want to call in, 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296 if you want to join in on this conversation. I don't know how many of you feel as I do. I don't know how many of you who are listening tonight are familiar with my work, with my 3 books, my other writings. I do want to say a thank you, by the way. My publisher gives me regular updates on activity. I have been retired now from active practice for 7 years, almost 7 years. And there is no way that I could even do that, and no way that I could do all the other work that I do were it not for the unbelievable support that I have, primarily word of mouth, one person telling another about my work. In Sheep's Clothing, we're in discussions right now for 2 more foreign language publications. The last one will make the 14th foreign publication, and we're also in the process of developing a Spanish language edition, which will come out in 2015. But long before the rights to this book were sold to Parker's Brothers publishers, it was published independently. Independently, and just through word of mouth, In Sheep's Clothing sold 250,000 copies from one person telling another. That's phenomenal. And for it to be on the bestseller list for now what will be 18 years running is unprecedented. So I owe everything to my audience, to those folks who have found what I've had to say helpful in understanding the times that we're in, the crisis of character that we face, and for recommending my website, my blog, and my books to other folks. It's that word of mouth that has done it all, and I couldn't ask for any better advertising. Last week, a wonderful person called in toward the end of the hour and had some wonderful things to say. And I'm not tooting my own horn here, but I just want to say that when someone like that calls in and has such kind things to say, it's not only validating for me, and believe me, I do really appreciate that validation. So there are some days when it's harder than others to keep going. And if I didn't get the dozens or so email that I get every single day, and hundreds that I get every month, from folks all over, in several different countries actually, who affirm some of the things that I say, I don't know how I could do it. That affirmation really means a lot. But when this wonderful woman called in last week, it was heartwarming to me because, frankly, that's the best advertising that you can get. If she tells only one other person, if she says, look, I was dealing with a situation in my life, and this book or this program or this person helped me see it like it was, helped me change my life, that person tells another person, and that person tells another person, it's everything. It's everything. I couldn't possibly ask for more. I am probably, well, I consider myself, without a doubt, the most blessed person on earth. Today was Mother's Day, and I have to be blessed with the best wife on earth and the best mother for my children that anyone could possibly ask for. I am married to a woman by the name of Sherry. Her name is Cheryl, but she doesn't really like that name. She likes to go by Sherry. Dear Sherry and I met when I was in graduate school, and which was a really rough time to meet and to marry, because it's hard enough getting through graduate school single, but we did it. We even started a family, and we made it. And we got married in 1981, so that gives you an idea of how long we've been married. And it has been an unbelievable experience for me, a path of growth in the richness of a relationship and in the richness of love that I couldn't possibly have imagined. And like I said, she is the best partner a person could have, and the best mother that I know, the great mother to my children. So to all of you, and to dear Sherry, if she's listening right now, to all of you out there who have taken that wonderful role, that key role in the socialization process of our children. A happy Mother's Day to you. I hope you've had a blessed day. I hope that you have been surrounded by family and friends and nothing but good times, and I hope that you have enjoyed the day immensely and spent the time with those that you love and enjoyed the time together. What an important role the parenting role is in shaping the character of our children. Society plays a big role too, though. You know, our culture has so many things that we have to battle against, it seems, as parents. It's almost like, you know, there's that saying, it takes a village, but you know, when you hate for your children to even venture out into the village for fear of what they will see, what they will hear, what kind of attitudes that they will come across, what kinds of poison for the mind that they will be exposed to, poison that will shape attitudes that will then lead them to perhaps some behaviors that will be either self-destructive or destructive to others, or help further deteriorate our already severely wounded culture. It's tough as a parent. It's tough to make sure that your children at least get exposed to those values and those principles that will carry them well through life, and that will orient them toward those things that will help them not only build a prosperous life for themselves, but an abundantly full and prosperous life for all the rest of us. We are in this together, whether we like it or not. We are in this together, and we have a monumental challenge in front of us. The freedom that we enjoy, the precious freedom that we enjoy, is at risk. The very life that we enjoy is at risk. Everything we know and hold dear is at risk. This world has become a very unsafe place. And this war that has been declared, both internally, this internal war on character, and this external war against freedom, these are very real wars that if we don't respond to and we don't wake up to first, I don't know that many people have woken up yet. I think there are a lot of folks out there who are asleep at the switch and won't wake up. You know, 9/11 seems like a memory. You know, it was a wake-up call, I think, for a couple of months. And then it faded. And then people got very, very weary. I think we made some big mistakes in how we conducted the so-called war on terror. And it got some folks very jaded and numb to the whole process and disinterested and even adverse to the whole idea of fighting a war on terror. But we are in a very real war, and there are enemies both internal and external, and we need to recognize that fact. before we can mobilize ourselves doing something about it. So I encourage all of you to reflect very carefully on the blessings not only of the day, but on the precious freedoms that we enjoy, and how at risk and tenuous they always are, and what we owe to ourselves in the way of preserving those things that we take for granted, not the least of which is our precious freedom, that very precious freedom that we enjoy here in America, perhaps more than any other place on earth, and hope to pass on for generations to come. So with that, I'm going to be winding things up and asking you to tune in again next week for another edition of Character Matters. I'll see you then. Oops, I have misjudged the time, it seems. I have misjudged the time. I see that we have 4 minutes left. So I'm going to ask if, I really had no more material for today. I'm going to apologize for that. But I'm going to ask once again if anybody else wants to call in at 718-717-8296. To call in, we can have a conversation about whatever you choose. That's 718-717-8296. If you want to call in. Also, maybe I can make a couple of announcements here while we still have a few minutes. There are some videos on YouTube that you can go to. I have a YouTube channel. You'll see several videos about excerpts from my webinar series, so you can get material on character development. You can get material on the new psychology by visiting YouTube. You'll also find 4 or 5 videos on YouTube of the anthem that plays at the opening and closing of this program. And you can learn about how to write in for and contact me and get sheet music for performances for that. And also on Facebook, I have a professional page. If you search in Facebook for Dr. George Simon, the professional page, and also if you look on Facebook, there's a page for America My Home. So look for Dr. George K. Simon and for America My Home on Facebook, and you'll get all the information you need, both about how to contact me and about how to get information for performances of the song America My Home. You'll also find some posted performances from around the country, some video performances and some audio performances from around the country on the Facebook page America My Home as well. So please visit those pages, if you will, and the YouTube videos, and please consider coming back next week as well, when we'll have more to say about Character Matters. We're going to be talking a lot about the new discipline next week. We meant to get into that in more depth a week ago, kind of ran out of time, and I digressed today, so we'll be doing that next week on Character Matters. So be sure to tune in, and we'll be discussing the new discipline and what we need.